We're now being recorded, just so that you are aware. Okay. Right. So, first of all, thank you for attending our time management session and micro learning session. And can I just check that, first of all, that you can all see me, you can all hear me, and you can also see the presentation that's on screen at the moment. You can, yeah, a thumbs up, thank you. That's great. You can also raise your hand if you've got any questions, which I will, thank you, Andrew, which I'll be able to go through as we go along. So, first of all, a little bit of housekeeping. Can you make sure that you're on mute when you're not speaking, or if you need to ask a question, you can unmute yourself. Ensure that your camera is on, so I can check that you're actually engaging and not just on your phone and doing other stuff. And you can raise your hand if you require any assistance as well. Okay. So if you can as well, keep distractions to a minimum. Obviously, if there is something more pressing, then of course you can go to attend that. I'm going to stop you for going on a micro learning session, stopping you doing things that were more important. So, just getting into the first part of it, our learning objective. Obviously, we've not got a huge amount of time, so I've not inundated us with huge amounts of learning objectives. But by the end of this session, hopefully, you'll be able to identify a range of time management techniques, which I'm sure will come in useful in your roles as school teachers. So that's obviously all what your profession is. And as a result of that, I'm pretty confident that you will all have time management techniques that you will currently use yourselves. You must do through the nature of the job and profession that you're in. So if you can scan that QR code or join at slido.com, and it's an active poll, and essentially what time management techniques have you heard of or do you currently utilize? Okay, we've got lists. You can add as many as you want, by the way. It's not just one that we're sticking to. You can just chuck as many as you want into there. Okay. When you think you've added all the bits and pieces you want, you can just put a virtual hand up, and I know that you've completed as many as you've got. Okay, an interesting one there actually is I see is the car. So Matt, you've finished. So you've put all your bits and pieces in. Thank you. Andrew's the same. Thank you. Laurie, the same. So just you. Cargs now.
Sorry. How do I say that I finished? Sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay. That's not a problem. At least we know you're all done. Right. Okay. So we've got breaking up the day into chunks, routines, up early. That's an interesting one. Getting up early, which we'll look into a little bit later on. Nike, there's lots and lots there. Bus, travel, in the car. Just out of interest, who put in the car, and what exactly are you utilising your time? Andrew, go on. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So just try and use like any tasks that I can only do in the car. For example, phone calls, or for example, like today, I was needed to be on hold to an external provider, and I knew I'd be on hold for 30, 40 minutes. So I just knew that I'd use that time in the car because I knew I had to be in the car for 45 minutes anyway. So simple.
Right, brilliant, thank you. So what also I've noted there is listing things. That's quite a common thing for people to do. I'll just generate this list. Lists, sorry, can become quite overwhelming, especially as they start to grow. So we'll look at a few techniques that we can utilise to help us along the way. I want to first sort of look at Parkinson's law. Has anyone heard of this? Parkinson's law. Shakes of heads. No. No. Okay, so Cyril Parkinson, essentially, he was a historian and author, and he noted that actually, as that quotation says, if we give ourselves amount of time for doing a particular task, we will utilize all of that time. So he looked at more bureaucracy and how that basically we fill time with a particular job. So, for example, if you give yourself an hour to wash the car, you will spend a full hour washing the car. And you'd get the same result if you gave yourself half an hour to wash the car. You'd be more efficient in completing that task because that's essentially human nature. So has anyone found themselves doing that before? Has anyone definitely done that? Or yeah, a few nods of the head. So that's sort of in essence what we're going to look at, how we can stop that from happening. And also what is interesting is having known you, there's definitely a technique in here that you will do anyway that will stop this effect of this Parkinson's law from happening. Okay, so first of all, the time management matrix. So Matt, if you just put your hand down there, you still got your hand down. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So saw a few nods of the heads, and who's heard of this time management matrix before or seen this time management matrix? So yeah, Matt, you've seen it. Any of the other two, three? Sorry, no. Okay, so Stephen Covey came up with this in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which some of you may have dipped in and out of. But instead of producing a list, what we can actually do is we can put different tasks into the different quadrants that you see there. So is it important and urgent? Is it important but not urgent? Is it not important but urgent? Or is it not important and not urgent? So you can see there what you can do. So instead of just producing your list that you might normally do, you might produce the list in this format and decide actually where do they need to go. Because I've done it myself. You start focusing on things that you believe to be important or urgent and not actually focusing on the things that you are required to do that are quite often deadline related, which is what you can see in the important and urgent. We've got deadline driven projects. So that might be something to stop you running around chasing your tail, as it were. Okay. Is there any questions on that, or is there anything that, you know, would you use it? Matt, you've seen it. Have you used it? Do you not find it useful? You're on mute.
I think I'm just trying to figure out which one. I think it's quite easy to get stuck in the bottom right, that number 4. Maybe just easy work that you can do without thinking, rather than maybe the top right, which is not urgent but important to get right for your medium term and long term stuff. That can take a back seat as you fill your day with just easy stuff to do to give yourself a false sense of achievement.
Yeah, it's something that, how many times do we do the things that we actually want to do because we find them, or the things we find enjoyable? So we'll do that because we can get what we perceive as quite quick wins out of it. It's definitely something that you might see. You might see it if you're at the gym. If people particularly like a particular exercise, that's what they will generally do, routine every time. But actually, is it the things that they need to be working on? Especially as your sports coaches, that's something that you'll definitely see. Especially as some of you have seen me play rugby, so or have played with me. The only person I haven't played with actually is Andrew, quite interestingly, in there. So yeah, you never know. So yeah, that's something that you might utilize. Hopefully it brings something a little bit more to your time management. Okay, so the Pomodoro technique. Has anyone seen the Pomodoro technique? You can put hands up, shakes of heads, see a little, so a few no's. Laurie, was that a yes or no?
I've seen it. I've never used it. I think it was shown to me at university, but I just quickly reverted back to old habits, and so I don't actually. I've never used it. No.
Right, okay. So it's interesting it was shown to you at university. It was developed by somebody who was at university in the late 80s. And he used, the reason it's called a Pomodoro technique is he actually used a kitchen time, you know, those kind of like tomato kitchen timers. So as it says there, it is quite simple. You decide on that task that you want to complete. Obviously, certain tasks lend themselves to this particular technique. And you set your time for 25 minutes with 0 distractions. That's sort of like the key aspect to this. Can't be distracted. It's 25 minutes solid work. It might be a technique that some of you start to give to some of your own students, especially as they start to get into sort of GCSEs and things like that. You work, like it says there, you work for 25 minutes. You take a short 5-minute break, you repeat that 4 times, and then on the 5th time, you take a 15 to 30-minute break. Now, as you're aware, in fact, the reason the session is for me to complete my own qualification, and it's something that genuinely I have used, and in my time working at Peugeot, it was something that was quite heavily pushed to go through this technique, and it's surprising in 25 minutes without Instagram, Facebook, phone going off, all of the above, how much you can actually achieve in such a short period of time. Like I say, it does lend itself to certain tasks and things to complete, but it might be something you want to take forward. We shall see. Is there any questions on that particular technique? Is it something that we might use for students? So if I ask Cargs, what do you think you would use this with your students as they start getting into?
I think, like you say, it depends what type of person you are. I mean, for me, once I start doing something, I'm doing it. I'd hate to stop myself after 25 minutes because I'd be in the moment. I'd want to just get it done. So if I was looking at a timer and I haven't finished, it'd frustrate me. But other people probably could do that.
Okay, so here's a question then to the other side. So if that's the case, would you be able to do a solid amount of work for a continue? Do you think you then would suffer more burnout as a result of not taking that 5-minute break, or do you think that you are the type that I can do huge amounts, constantly?
I've not tried this. I haven't tried this way, but that's my perception of how I am. But maybe if I tried it, it'd help me. But yeah, I feel like I work best if I just give myself like a long time and just get it done in one sitting.
Yeah.
But this could definitely be a way to try. Definitely, yeah.
Like it only works for certain tasks, and it's interesting that Laurie was introduced to it at university because it's very much a studying kind of based thing. But I'm thinking more in terms of your stuff, the monotony which I found when I was teaching of marking books and things like that, or those kind of tasks that you just need to slog out, get them done. It's quite useful for that. So that might be something that you go
100%.
with.
I didn't think about it as a marking sort of thing, but yeah, that could definitely work on that, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, right. Our next slide, which I'm sure you've all seen smart objectives. Yeah, that's pretty standard, pretty commonplace, especially in your line of work. And what's interesting is how you use smart targets. Now, I think when I first was shown smart targets, yes, these specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, but I would use the entirety of that goal, what I was trying to achieve for that particular smart objective. So an example of this, and you're not allowed to laugh because obviously I know you find it funny with my car, but if the end goal was to build the car that I was building, what I would previously have done is gone, well, I need it to be finished by this time as a whole. But actually, by breaking it down into its component parts, and I want to get, for example, the engine built by a certain date, the engine is a small component or a mid-sized component that we can then build the bigger picture around. So we're not focusing on the huge mountain that is building the entirety of the car. So what I would then do is utilize multiple elements of these time management techniques. So we could use the time management matrix. Are they important? Are they urgent? Then we could add smart objectives to each one of those tasks that we've got. And obviously some of these things you'll just do naturally. It's interesting that you'll all have these strong time management skills that just become natural to you. But I'm thinking of the times when you start to become overwhelmed with the amount of workload. How many times do we sit back and actually consider what that workload is? So that's just something. And the reason, you'll be pleased to know, the reason there's boxes there is it's, if we take each round, as I know Matt has said previously, if you take each round and break it down into the little blocks, and what do you want to achieve in that particular boxing round, and we want to achieve, and then eventually we build the bigger picture. So maybe consider the way that you use smart objectives. Laurie, have you used smart objectives in that way for a bigger picture that you then reduce down into multiple smart objectives?
I suppose, yeah. Marking's probably the main one. Just thinking about like specifically what it is that I'm going to be marking, or the way that I might mark. Is it that I'm going to go through, I'm going to choose 10 papers, I'm going to mark question 5 on each paper, and then I'm going to or am I going to mark through a paper and then the next paper and then the next paper and so on.
Sorry, just to interject there, what I, just purely out of interest, out of all of you, how do you complete your marking task? Because I tried both ways. Do you mark each, would you mark each question for a series of different students? If you do that, you can raise your virtual hand or have discussions. You can talk. You take them off mute if you need to, gents, and you can chat.
I find with longer answer questions, so like for GCSE PE, for example, like a 12 marker, I'm better at marking those if there's one of those, I'll flip to the back and I'll do all the 12 markers, every pupil's 12 marker, because it's in my head and I know the sort of levels,
criterias and
that. But if I'm talking the rest of the paper, your 1s and 2 mark questions, I just sort of fly through each pupil sort of thing.
Yeah. With like reports, I tend to have like my Excel document open like first thing in the morning, and I just keep it open for the rest of the day. So if I find myself on one task and I find myself procrastinating, I'll go, right, boom, that's my to get myself back on page, and I'll just do 2 or 3. Or if I look at my clock and I see there's 4 minutes to go before the bell, I'm like, right, I can get 4 out in 4 minutes, go. Set myself some little targets and just chip away at it then.
Interesting. Just that was interesting. I'm just conscious of time, so thank you for your answers. So from today's training, sort of bringing it to a close, what I'm interested to find out here is which one applies to you. Now, what this will allow me to do, I know that all you are teachers, if I'm going to provide training for another group of people that they might be working in pharmaceuticals, for example, or whatever that sphere might be, what technique best suits them, and start to build a bit of a picture of what might actually suit them. So again, a Slido again. So you need to scan that and do what you need to do. And from the other, if we're happy to, if someone does go for that, we can discuss it and what might have been in that original work plan. Right, interesting. Okay, so the majority of us, the time management, we've got a right bit of a mix, it's still going. Okay, so who's voted the other, just out of interest, and what is the other, if we're happy to share that? Oh no, it's gone again. Right, okay.
Sorry,
So
I clicked 2, so I amended my
your decision.
vote. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, Andrew. So interesting that it's more that the smart objects is probably something you've seen before. But again, I suppose actually putting those time limits on would tie into Parkinson's law. Right, so just find a little bit very quickly. Is there anybody got any questions, or are we all quite happy with what we've covered today?
Quite happy with that. Very clear.
Brilliant.
Yeah, very clear. Giving me a couple of strategies. Certainly going to try 1 or 2 of them out.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
And then
same as
finally,
Andrew.
there's a couple of resources there for you to be able to have a look at your leisure, and I will send those out to you. But other than that, it's thank you very much, and thank you for your time, gentlemen, and I'll still see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.